Good morning. My name is Rin, and I am your lay worship leader for today's service. I warmly welcome you to First Parish Unitarian Universalist Church in Bridgewater. I've been an unofficial member here for 2 years, I think, and I serve on whatever committee they need me to. What I love about First Parish is the warm and welcoming community. I've never felt so seen and welcomed anywhere else besides here. Before we begin our time of worship, we have some announcements. If I could invite Pastor Rosemary.
Thanks, Rin. Ooh, thank you, Rin. All right, so can I get our ushers to hold up those new cards that are at the back table? So our worship committee has printed and produced these pastoral care connection cards, which are a new thing we're going to try. If you'd like the worship associate to light a candle for you during the time of joys and sorrows and you don't want to come forward yourself, or if there's something you'd like to share with me that's a little easier to write out than to cold email me about or find me at coffee hour and tell me about, you can write on these cards and hand them to our lay leader before the service starts or during joys and sorrows. There's different options to check on there for how we can connect you to our caring committee, or I can reach out to you, or we can just simply light a silent candle for you. And we'll have these out at our tables every week, so please feel free to use them as you'd like to. That's all from me.
All right, are there any other announcements? No? Okay. First Parish Bridgewater is a welcoming congregation. We proudly fly the rainbow flag to symbolize our welcome to people of all identities, ages, and backgrounds. If you are new to First Parish, we hope you enjoy your experience this morning. We encourage you to fill out the guest book on the table at the back of the sanctuary, where Carrie and Hadley are. For newcomers joining online, please see the sign-up link posted in the chat. We invite all who are here in person to join us after the service for a time of fellowship in the Upper Parish Hall. This service is being hosted via Zoom. It is being recorded for Bridgewater Cable TV and for YouTube. You can find the link to the YouTube video in the weekly bridging. The recording camera is turned off to protect your privacy during the sharing of joys and sorrows. In the event of an emergency or evacuation drill, please leave the building through the main sanctuary doors, or should you need a ramp, through the school street entrance to my left. You are welcome here. Thank you for joining us. Your presence makes a difference. We will now begin our time of worship with the prelude. Would Hadley please come forward to light our chalice? Please join in reciting our chalice lighting words.
We light the chalice to mark this sacred hour as we gather in this beautiful historic sanctuary both in body and in spirit, we connect to the many generations that have come here to explore the divine. Let us join our hearts and find the holy in one another, to each other. It is time to share worship together.
Please rise in body or spirit and let us join our voices for the affirmation of our covenant.
Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its gift. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to speak the truth in love, and to help one another.
Good morning, everyone. Our opening words today come from Reverend Julian Jamaica Soto, a Unitarian Universalist minister whose work I read to you so often because this book of poetry is so good. This is a poem called Remembering the Future. Can we develop the skill of remembering the future? Can we commit to build the community that will extend into a time we know only by memory because it will outlast us? Memorize the compass points of the day yet to come, the truth, the love, the fire, the endless yes of the horizon. Shake the scales from your imagination. Reach, stretch, rise. There is no more time for pretending that everything will be all right without your care, without your attention. You can mourn, grief being more real at times than the promise of the sunrise, more real than the peace of the moon that by inconstant sliver turns, disappears. And yet, while we may mourn changes, losses, deceptions, and betrayals, beneath the ash, we find the ember. We weep, and then, as we have learned from labor movements, we organize. Remember the day toward which we gather, the tomorrow toward which we advance. It is with your actions today that you engage that muscle memory, that sense of smell, the ragged velvet feel of a day that you have never lived. It is also your day. Remember it well. Please rise in body or spirit and join me in singing our opening hymn, number 170. We are a gentle, angry people.
We are gentle, angry
time in our service for the sharing of joys and sorrows, those matters of great personal significance that touch us, our families, and loved ones. If you have a joy or sorrow, please come to the front to light a candle. If you would like to speak, please keep your sharing brief at this time so the ritual moves smoothly. You may also choose to light your candle in silence. Online participants are invited to share by typing your joys and sorrows in the chat. A volunteer in the sanctuary will read them aloud.
We arrive together in this place, bringing the pieces of our complex lives, not leaving them behind, but letting ourselves feel for real what is going on with us. All that you bring is welcome here. In today's prayer, I want to honor the words of the anthem our choir is singing today, Lo Yisagoy. The words in Hebrew are Lo Yisagoy el goy herev, Lo yilmedu od milhamach. And this is translated into English. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, and they shall no longer learn ways of war. This is a piece we selected in the spirit of hope and nonviolence. But this week and today, a ceasefire has taken place for the people of Palestine and the people of Israel. For a moment, nation shall not lift up sword against nation. There is a fragile, brave hope, a real one, that this conflict will not claim any more lives, and that fragile hope has sparked a small flame of belief in me, and I hope in you too, that in this moment of pause, the violence will not start again. There is still much in front of this political moment. I want to honor that there's not yet a positive peace, one which comes along with the lack of indirect and structural violence and comes with the building of understanding and connection. This peace deal is a negative peace, defined by the pause, the lack. I pray for peace over the world today, for the people of Sudan undergoing yet another civil war, for the people of Ukraine, the people of Russia. Let us hold steadfastly today to Martin Luther King Jr.'s commitment to nonviolence in all ways. This is a courageous hope, a fragile hope, a brave one, and we must carry it forward. Would you join me in a moment of prayer for peace? A moment of meditation, a pause here and now. May it be so. Please stay seated, and we'll sing our musical meditation today. Hymn number 199, Precious Lord, Take My Hand.
Stand
Each Sunday, we collect an offering to support the ministries of the church and the mission of a community organization that shares our faith values. This month, contributions to our collection plate are being shared with the Massachusetts Peace Action, a nonpartisan nonprofit promoting a just and peaceful U.S. foreign policy. Through grassroots organizing, advocacy, and education, they work to end war, prevent nuclear weapon proliferation, and reallocate military spending to human and environmental needs. To donate, write a check to First Parish with MAPA in the memo. You may also donate online through the First Parish Church website. This morning's offering will now be given and gratefully received. We now have a reading by, Victoria Safford. Our mission is to plan ourselves at the gates of hope, not the prudent gates of optimism, which are somewhat narrower, not the stalwart, boring gates of common sense, nor the strident gates of self-righteousness, which creak on shrill and angry hinges. People cannot hear us there, they cannot pass through. Nor the cheerful, flimsy garden gate of everything is going to be all right, but a different, sometimes lonely place, the place of truth-telling, about your own soul first of all and its condition, the place of resistance and defiance, the piece of ground from which you see the world, both as it is and as it could be, as it will be. The place from which you glimpse not only struggle, but the joy of the struggle. And we stand there, beckoning and calling, telling people what we are seeing, asking people what they see.
Thank you so much, choir. It's beautiful, and thank you, Patty, for playing flute with us today. It's a joy. Our Soul Matters theme this month is story. So I want to tell you a couple stories for this time of the year. And I'll start with one that Unitarian Universalists love to tell, even if we get the details wrong, like I did in the newsletter this week. So that's good. In the early 19th century in Boston, a young man from a large family that didn't have any wealth ardently wanted to become a minister. He wanted to become a part of the social and the intellectual elite in Boston. When he was 19, he passed the entrance examinations of Harvard College, but he couldn't pay the tuition. Instead of attending another college, he instead read the entire Harvard curriculum on his own. Then he applied for admission to Harvard Divinity School, where he was accepted and where he excelled. This is Reverend Theodore Parker, a transcendentalist and one of the strongest voices in the early Unitarian movement. He served a church in West Roxbury, and then later in his career, an independent religious organization in Boston. One story about him prizes his intellectual contributions, which would become bastions of the Boston anti-slavery movement. Get this. Parker famously conspired with John Brown during the raid on Harper's Ferry. He helped fugitive slaves escape from the South by offering his church as a stop on the Underground Railroad. And he even, I promise I will never do this, kept a loaded pistol with him in the pulpit in case slave catchers came calling. When the Fugitive Slave Act went into effect in 1850, he became a core member of the group called the Vigilance Committee, the principal Boston organization which provided fugitives with material aid, legal assistance, and help in eluding capture. Another version of his story is more complicated. Parker regularly wrote disparagingly of the intellectual and moral capacity of Black people in America. This is a racist belief. Yet, he was still a militant egalitarian when racial policies were concerned. He favored integration long before it was popular, and he devoted much of his public life toward abolitionism and social reform. In 1853, typo, in one of his most famous sermons, he wrote this: "I do not pretend to understand the moral universe. The arc is a long one. My eye reaches but little ways. I cannot calculate the curve and complete the figure by experience of sight. I can divine it by conscience. And from what I see, I am sure it bends towards justice." Now we remember these words as belonging to the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., whose deep reading and study of American theological history exposed him to many of Parker's words in his sermons. A century and almost a decade later, in a speech given at the National Cathedral in 1968, King called out to us, "I come to say to you this afternoon, however difficult the moment, however frustrating the hour, it will not be long, because truth, crushed to earth, will rise again. How long? Not long, because no lie can live forever. How long? Not long, because you shall reap what you sow. How long? Not long, because the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends toward justice." My question today is, what are we Unitarian Universalists living in this moment in 2024 called to do today with Theodore Parker's legacy, with Dr. King's legacy? The instinct to whitewash them both is a compelling one. It is harder to tell a story which includes the full scope of Parker's beliefs about race. His racist practices do not tie neatly into a bow with his social activism. And we can see all over the country the instinct to pretend that Dr. King was popular at the time of his death or uncontroversial across society. It is a much harder story to tell, to talk about the violence the civil rights movement faced as it actually was, a violence intricately tied to today's systems of power, racist systems of police and politics. And so, what are we called to do with these complicated facts? Here's one way to look at things. In 1966, Dr. King gave the Ware Lecture, which is the closing lecture at our Unitarian Universalist Association's annual General Assembly. He titled his lecture, "Don't Sleep Through the Revolution." In it, he gave advice and instruction to those gathered on how to continue the fight for civil rights. He said, "One of the great misfortunes of history is that all too many individuals and institutions find themselves in a great period of change and yet fail to achieve the new attitudes and outlooks that the new situation demands. There is nothing more tragic than to sleep through a revolution. And there can be no gainsaying of the fact that a social revolution is taking place in our world today. We see it in other nations in the demise of colonialism. We see it in our own nation, in the struggle against racial segregation and discrimination. And as we notice this struggle, we are aware of the fact that a social revolution is taking place in our midst. In the rest of the lecture, he laid bare the economic reality of racial and social inequity. He named the real, tangible work to still do in the movement for civil rights, and he called on all churches to be a part of the demonstrations which would continue to urge the country forward. Friends, we are still in this long arc together. I do not think it has bent all the way to justice just yet. Now, in 2025, it is one day before the inauguration of a violent and undemocratic politician into the Oval Office. We still have to remember that we have the capacity to continue to bend the arc. Dr. King, in the Ware Lecture, used this language. He said, "I am proud to be maladjusted to wrong." Maladjusted. I love that. Let us continue in that tradition. Let us work for LGBTQ rights because we are proud to be maladjusted to the backlash against our queer and trans siblings. Let us continue to advocate for universal health care because we are proud to be maladjusted to a world in which people die waiting for health care they cannot afford. King wrote this, "I call on you to be maladjusted, and all people of goodwill to be maladjusted to these things until the good society is realized. I never intend to adjust myself to segregation and discrimination. I never intend to become adjusted to religious bigotry. I never intend to adjust myself to economic conditions that will take necessities from the many to give luxuries to the few, and leave millions of people perishing on a lonely island of poverty in the midst of a vast ocean of prosperity. I must honestly say, however much criticism it brings, that I never intend to adjust myself to the madness of militarism and to the self-defeating effects of physical violence. It is only through our continued maladjustment, by not accepting, supporting, or normalizing hateful rhetoric, that we can do our work today through the practice of love. Only by acting for justice can we claim this heritage of activism, because in reality, UU history is more complicated than is comfortable. And we have to believe that love, radical love, liberating love, is powerful enough to conquer our fears around doing this counter-oppression work wrong or ending up on a losing side. Dr. Cornel West writes that Dr. King understood radical love as a process of self-examination, where the fearful, hateful, egoistic self dies daily to be reborn into a courageous, loving, and sacrificial self. That radical love transforms our relationships with ourselves and with humanity. Cornel West writes that King had a radical love of humanity, especially of poor and working people, and that radical love led him to a radical analysis of power, domination, and oppression. This analysis left King heartbroken, yet with deep clarity about the corruption and possibilities for healing in front of the entire country. Not only does love liberate us from fear, it lets us see clearly. Love lets us name that we never intend to be adjusted to the evils in our world. And liberating love also frees us to encounter honestly our complicated, beautiful, Unitarian Universalist heritage. It calls us to the work of reconciliation and repair, to practices of moral and economic reparations. I grew up in a Unitarian Universalism that was recovering from the simplified multiculturalism of the 1990s, where there was an allergy to naming the histories of racism and harm within our own faith. As a teenager, I regularly listened to stories of peers, often people of color, who felt deeply unwelcome, experienced microaggression, tone policing, and were shamed for their relationship with the Christianity of their families. Their Unitarian Universalist communities welcomed them, loved them on the surface, yet it felt like a love without depth behind it. It felt like tolerance. And so many of these youth left our faith, as many people of color have done, and I do not blame them. As Unitarian Universalists, we need to ask ourselves today, are we ready to put love's name to that tenderness and community of care which we build so well within our own walls? Cornel West writes that justice is what love looks like in public, just like tenderness is what love feels like in private. To do that will require that we tell the truth, that inequality persists long past Martin Luther King Jr.'s time, and the truth we tell must be unarmed, the love must be unapologetic. King preached that power without love is reckless and abusive, but love without power is sentimental and anemic. Power, at its best, is love implementing the demands of justice, and justice, at its best, is power correcting everything that stands against love. We Unitarian Universalists long shied away from choosing a central value. We had 6 principles and then 7, ranked in a list. It is courageous of us now to choose to center love in the statement of our values that passed at last year's General Assembly. I sincerely pray that this is the kind of love that Dr. King had his own roots in. Love that is without condition, love that ties us up together across our divisions, calls us to witness injustice and prejudice even when they are within us. Yet, this new statement of values was only passed by 80.3% of the vote at our General Assembly last summer. We still affirmed this change as the next right step for our association, but it was not without controversy. Dear ones, let us not sleep through this revolution. Let us not sleep through the power of these values which reflect the capacity of our Unitarian Universalist faith. Let's hover on this edge of the new world and continue to do what we like to do, which is hard, to make the brave choice, the hard choice, or an unpopular one in the pursuit of love and justice. We do not have to be perfect to do this work in the world now. We cannot be. In this faith, let us work to magnify the light we find within one another rather than shy away from it. Magnify that small spark of possibility within each one of us. The love at the center of my faith tells me that making faithful choices is not easy, and it will not be easy. But it tells me that it is rewarding. It tells me that belonging to one another is worth it. Love reminds me that we are as powerful as we want to be. It reminds me that if I am uncomfortable with the state of the world, that means I am paying attention. It calls me to reach out my hands to others and with them, together, bend the arc of the universe toward justice. Amen.
The time has come to extinguish our chalice. Do our closing hymn. Oh, right. Yeah. Closing hymn first, sorry. Closing hymn is 10:17. Let's rise. Sorry, hold on.
Every day
As we go forth from this place today, let us lead with love. Let us lead ourselves into justice. And let's not be scared of what is to come, because we have one another here at the gates of hope. Blessed be.
The time has come to extinguish our chalice, finally. Please join me in our chalice extinguishing words.
We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
Our time of worship has ended. Our time of fellowship now begins. If you would like to stay for coffee hour, please make your way to the upper parish hall. And thank you for your patience with me.
Yes.